What if the greatest power you hold isn't in speaking louder, but in daring to remain silent? What if real strength isn't found in chasing recognition, but in quietly mastering yourself, when no one is watching? And what if wisdom, the kind that reshapes entire lives, doesn't come from being heard, but from truly listening? We live in a world consumed by noise. Every platform urges us to speak louder, post faster, react quicker. But what if that endless noise is blinding us from the truth? The truth Marcus Aurelius understood centuries ago. Silence is not weakness. Silence is resilience. Today, we ask a daring question. Can ChatGPT think like Marcus Aurelius? Not in the sense of imitating ancient philosophy as dry quotes, but in exploring how timeless Stoic lessons can actually transform your daily life. So let us strip away the noise. Let us pause, breathe, and return to the wisdom hidden in stillness. These are Stoic lessons that will change you, and as you hear them, remember this isn't about memorizing quotes. It's about reshaping the way you see yourself, others, and the world around you. Marcus Aurelius, Rome's philosopher-emperor, knew this long before the age of constant distraction. He wrote in his Meditations that much of what we say and hear is unnecessary, that our words, if uncontrolled, scatter like arrows in the wind, hitting no target, serving no purpose. The Stoic path begins not with louder arguments, but with quiet observation, and here lies our first reminder. Listening builds wisdom. While listening, be cause. When you listen, you receive instead of react. You gather instead of scatter. You allow the world to reveal itself rather than forcing your view upon it. Silence opens a space where truth can enter. Think about it. How many times have you spoken too soon, only to regret it later? How many arguments grew worse because no one paused to hear? Silence in this way is not emptiness. It is preparation. It is sharpening the blade before striking. Aurelius himself was surrounded by generals, politicians, advisors, and critics. His court was filled with words. Yet the emperor understood the rare art of silence. He was not quick to interrupt. Instead, he gathered the strands of conversation, wove them together, and made decisions grounded in reason rather than ego. Silence is your ally, because silence allows you to see. In our modern lives, we mistake volume for value. The louder the opinion, the more we assume it carries weight. But have you noticed? Those who truly know rarely shout. A master craftsman doesn't boast, his work speaks. A wise teacher doesn't drown you in words, he waits until you are ready. That is why silence is so powerful. It separates the wise from the restless. It filters impulse from insight. Imagine standing in a heated argument, the room boiling with tension. Everyone raises their voice, but you remain still. At first they see weakness, but then they notice your calm, and slowly, your silence speaks louder than their rage. This is the paradox Aurelius leaves us. By holding back, you advance. By saying less, you become more. And if you think silence is passive, you are mistaken. Silence is discipline. It is armor. It trains the mind to observe before acting, to weigh before deciding, to rise above the pettiness of noise. So let us pause here and ask, when was the last time you listened more than you spoke? When was the last time you embraced the discomfort of silence, not as a void, but as a vessel, because here lies the heart of Stoicism, not in chasing applause, not in speaking endlessly, but in shaping yourself through restraint. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of control. It is the first step toward resilience, the kind Marcus Aurelius lived by, and so. The journey begins here. Listening builds wisdom. But wisdom alone is not enough. To live fully, we must learn the next lesson of Stoicism: gratitude. Because silence teaches you to listen, but gratitude teaches you to see. So as we close this first reminder, let it echo within you. Silence is not weakness. It is your superpower. The one who listens learns. The one who learns grows. But silence, if left alone, risks becoming cold and distant, which is why Marcus Aurelius gives us the next path: to live with gratitude. Gratitude that reshapes how you see every hardship, every gift, every moment. Let's step into that lesson now. Because once you learn to listen, the natural response is to recognize the value of what you hear. We began with silence, not as weakness, but as strength. Silence as discipline. Silence as resilience. Silence as the fertile soil where wisdom begins to grow. That reminder stays with us, because in listening, we open the door to deeper understanding. But silence alone is not enough. To live fully, to walk with clarity in the storm of life, Marcus Aurelius teaches us the next lesson: gratitude, lesson 2. Live with gratitude, gratitude. A word so often spoken it risks losing its meaning. But for the Stoics, gratitude wasn't a soft sentiment. It was a powerful act of resilience. Think about it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of vast armies, ruler of the known world. Yet in his meditations, written not for the public but for himself, he constantly returned to gratitude. Gratitude for the teachers who shaped him. Gratitude for the hardships that strengthened him. Gratitude for life itself. Fleeting as it was, why would a man who had everything, power, wealth, armies, prestige, keep reminding himself to be grateful? Because Aurelius knew the truth. Without gratitude, abundance turns into greed. Without gratitude, success becomes arrogance. Without gratitude, hardship becomes despair. Gratitude grounds you. It pulls you back from the endless craving for what you lack. It shifts your gaze to what is already in your hands. Imagine your day. You wake up. The light touches your face. Air fills your lungs. And yet, how often do you stop to recognize the miracle of it? How often do you pause to thank existence itself for another chance? The Stoics believed every day is borrowed time. Life is fragile, unpredictable, impermanent, and gratitude is how we honor that fragility. By saying, this moment is enough. This breath is enough. But gratitude is not passive. It does not mean pretending hardship doesn't hurt. Instead, gratitude transforms hardship into strength. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, invasions, betrayals. Yet he wrote to himself, when you rise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive. To think, to enjoy, to love. Gratitude, in the Stoic sense, is rebellion against bitterness. It is a refusal to let pain dictate your spirit. Let's take an example. Imagine losing something: a job, a relationship, a possession. The natural response is grief, frustration, maybe anger. But the Stoic response is different. Instead of focusing on what is gone, they turn their gaze toward what remains. What can I learn from this? What strength has been revealed in me? What can I carry forward? Gratitude reshapes tragedy into teaching. It reshapes loss into perspective. This does not mean you deny your emotions. The Stoics did not advocate suppressing grief. They believed in acknowledging it, but not being ruled by it. Gratitude is how you honor what was, while still walking forward. In modern life, gratitude feels drowned by noise. Social media tempts us into constant comparison. The car we don't have, the trip we didn't take, the body we wish we had, all distractions pulling us away from the abundance already surrounding us. Gratitude is the antidote. It frees you from the endless hunger of comparison. Marcus Aurelius did not compare himself to others. He compared himself only to what virtue demanded of him. He thanked the universe for every opportunity to practice patience, humility, discipline, and love. And here's a truth: gratitude is not a feeling you wait for. It is a discipline you practice. The Stoics wrote about premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They double you. Would imagine losing what they had, not to torment themselves, but to deepen gratitude. If you wake up every day reminding yourself that nothing is guaranteed, your loved ones, your health, your comforts, you begin to see them differently. You stop treating them as permanent. You start treating them as gifts. The next time you sit with a friend, look at them as if it may be the last time. The next time you eat a meal, taste it as if it were your final one. This isn't morbid, it's liberating. Gratitude is sharpened by impermanence, and this is why Aurelius wrote, "Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away. Death is on your heels while you live, while you can. Be good." Gratitude teaches us urgency, but not the frantic urgency of chasing more. The calm urgency of living fully with what is already here. Ask yourself, what are you overlooking right now? What gift sits quietly in your life, waiting to be acknowledged? Are parents still alive? A friend still by your side? The health to walk and breathe and think? Gratitude is not a cliché. It is clarity. And once you begin practicing it, something remarkable happens. You stop asking life, "Why me?" and start asking, "Why not me?" You stop resenting obstacles and start appreciating them as teachers. Gratitude, Aurelius reminds us, is not only for pleasures, it is also for struggles. Because struggle sharpens you. Struggle makes you worthy of the strength you claim. When you are grateful even for hardship, you strip hardship of its sting. You take control of the narrative. So here's the challenge. Tonight, before sleep, write down 3 things you are grateful for. 1 joy, 1 hardship, 1 ordinary detail. Notice how gratitude shifts your vision. Because gratitude is not about changing what you have. It's about changing how you see. And in this shift, life itself begins to transform. So now we have walked from silence into gratitude. Silence gave us clarity. Gratitude gave us vision. But Marcus Aurelius does not stop there. He knew that silence and gratitude, though powerful, are incomplete without the practice of discipline. Because what is wisdom if not put into action? What is gratitude if not carried out through choices? That is where we go next, the story. See lesson of discipline. How to rule yourself before you seek to rule the world. We ended with gratitude, not the shallow gratitude of reciting blessings without thought, but the deeper Stoic gratitude, the kind that transforms hardship into wisdom, the kind that lifts your gaze from what is missing to what is already present. Gratitude gave us vision, but vision alone cannot build a life. It must be reinforced by action, by discipline. And so Marcus Aurelius leads us to the next foundation. Lesson 3, discipline. And self-mastery. Discipline, a word heavy with duty, often misunderstood as punishment or denial. But for the Stoics, discipline was not about punishment. It was about liberation, because what enslaves most people is not change from the outside, but the lack of control from within, impulses that dominate them, habits that consume them, distractions that scatter their focus. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by temptations, luxury, flattery, indulgence, endless opportunities to lose himself. Yet he reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Discipline is the art of remembering this. It is the daily act of reclaiming your mind from the forces trying to own it. Think of it like this. Every person fights two battles each day. The outer battle with circumstance and the inner battle with the self. The Stoics taught that the second battle is the only one that matters, because if you win the inner war, the outer war loses its power. But what does discipline look like? It is not grand gestures. It is daily choices. The discipline to rise when you said you would. The discipline to speak less and listen more. The discipline to do the work when no one is watching. The discipline to say no when temptation whispers. Small choices, repeated endlessly. That is discipline. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to wake early, to meet the day with energy instead of retreating into comfort. He wrote, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. Discipline begins the moment you refuse comfort in fog or of purpose. And here's the paradox, though. An disciplined life feels free, but it enslaves you. The disciplined life feels strict, but it liberates you. Why? Because discipline turns chaos into order. It turns weakness into strength. It transforms potential into reality. Without discipline, gratitude becomes a passing feeling instead of a practiced way of living. Without discipline, silence becomes avoidance instead of clarity. Discipline is the bridge that carries Stoic philosophy from thought into action. But discipline does not mean harshness toward yourself. It means fairness. Discipline is not the enemy of joy. It is its protector. Think about food. Without discipline, pleasure turns into excess. Excess turns into sickness. With discipline, food nourishes without consuming you. Think about words. Without discipline, speech turns into gossip. Gossip turns into regret. With discipline, speech becomes clear, honest, necessary. Think about time. Without discipline, days vanish into distraction, leaving only the ache of wasted hours. With discipline, each moment finds its weight and meaning. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. An emperor surrounded by endless demands, he disciplined his time by focusing only on what aligned with virtue. He asked himself, "Does this matter? Will this serve the greater good? Will this endure beyond today?" Discipline for the Stoics is about alignment, aligning your daily actions with your deeper principles. And here is the truth you accept. Discipline is not built in a day. It is forged like steel, tested by repetition, strengthened by resistance. Every time you resist the pull of distraction, you train discipline. Every time you choose effort over ease, you train discipline. Every time you return to your principles after falling short, you train discipline. This is why Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Discipline is not about arguing, wishing, or waiting. It is about doing. But ask yourself, how do you live discipline without turning cold, without losing the warmth of life? The Stoics had an answer. A balance. Discipline is not about denying joy. It is about protecting it from erosion. Without discipline, joy collapses into addiction. But with discipline, joy becomes sharper, brighter, earned. Imagine two men. One indulges every desire, drinks, feasts, distractions. His pleasures quickly dull, requiring more to satisfy him. He becomes restless, bored, empty. Another lives with discipline. He chooses moderation. He works toward his goals. He keeps his focus. When joy arrives, it floods him. Because he has not drowned in excess, discipline makes pleasure meaningful. And perhaps most importantly, discipline makes freedom possible. The world often sells us the illusion of freedom. Endless choice, endless consumption. But Stoicism reminds us, freedom without discipline is slavery to desire. True freedom is the ability to say no, the ability to direct your life, instead of being dragged by impulses. This is the paradox Aurelius understood. A man who ruled millions was most concerned with ruling himself. So here is the challenge this week. Choose one area of your life: time, speech, appetite, distractions, and impose discipline, not as punishment, but as liberation. Notice how your mind feels when you regain control. Notice how your spirit lifts when you are not owned by your impulses, because this is the path Marcus Aurelius walked daily. And if it worked for the Emperor of Rome, it can work for us. So far, we have learned silence for clarity, gratitude for vision, and discipline for strength. But there is one more lesson waiting in the shadows, a truth Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again: our mortality. Because no amount of silence, gratitude, or discipline can hide us from the inevitable, death. Yet, this is not a reason for fear. For the Stoics, remembering death was the key to living more fully. That is where we turn next. We just walked through the discipline of Marcus Aurelius, the discipline to master the self before attempting to master the world, the discipline to trade shallow comfort for a lasting freedom, the discipline that turns philosophy from mere thought into lived truth. But Marcus knew that even the strongest discipline could falter if we forgot the most sobering truth of all. Life is temporary. Lesson 4. Memento mori. Remember death. Memento mori. Remember that you must die. These words were not meant to frighten the Stoics. They were meant to awaken them. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, with armies at his command and wealth beyond measure, still wrote nightly to remind himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Why would the most powerful man in the world meditate on death? Because he understood that the shadow of mortality sharpens the light of life. Most people live as if tomorrow is guaranteed. They chase distractions, hoard possessions, waste days on petty arguments and shallow pursuits. They live as though life is a rehearsal, when in truth, it is the final act. The Stoics refused to live this way. For them, remembering death was not morbid. It was clarifying. Death is not the enemy. Marcus said, fear of death is the enemy. Avoidance of death is the enemy. When we deny death, we deny urgency. When we deny urgency, we deny life. Think of a man walking through a marketplace, pockets filled with gold. Yet, unaware a storm approaches, he laughs, he wonders. He wastes. But if he knew the storm would strike within the hour, how differently he would act, how urgently he would move, how clearly he would see what matters. Memento mori is that storm on the horizon. It is the reminder that every moment could be the last. And because of this, every moment is priceless. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to think this way. He would rise each day reminding himself that it could be his last sunrise. He would look upon his loved ones with the awareness that it could be the last embrace. He would rule with urgency, speak with honesty, live with depth, because he refused to waste what could vanish at any instant. What happens when you live like this? You stop postponing life. You stop telling yourself, I will be happy when. I will begin tomorrow. I will forgive someday. Instead, you begin now. You love now. You forgive now. Memento mori does not steal joy. It magnifies it. A flower becomes more beautiful because it will errs. Un wither. A song becomes more moving because it will soon end. A day becomes more precious because it will never return. The Stoics saw death not as darkness, but as contrast. Without death, life loses urgency. Without urgency, life loses meaning. But here's the great fear. People believe that thinking of death will make them anxious, restless, or depressed. Marcus Aurelius argued the opposite. Thinking of death makes you calm. Because when you accept the inevitability of death, you stop resisting reality. He wrote, it is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. That is the heart of Stoicism. Death is not the problem. Failing to live is the problem. Imagine this. You are holding an hourglass. Grains of sand slipping silently from one chamber to the other. Each grain is a moment of your life. You cannot stop them. You cannot hold them. You cannot know how many remain. What you can do, what Marcus insisted you must do, is honor each grain as it falls. Memento mori transforms time into treasure. But how does this look? In daily life, it means speaking truth while you can. Because one day, your voice will fall silent. It means showing kindness while you can. Because one day, The chance will vanish. It means living with courage while you can. Because one day, fear will no longer matter. This is not about rushing or panicking. It is about focusing on what endures. For Marcus, that meant living by virtue. He knew his power, his wealth, his empire, even his body would fade. But his character, his choices, his words, those could endure. Memento mori reminds us to ask, what will remain of me when I am gone? Will I leave behind bitterness or beauty? Will I leave regret or gratitude? Will I leave excuses? For example, this is the secret, the way death teaches life. When you remember death, you live not just for yourself, but for something greater. Consider how Marcus faced war, plague, betrayal. Yet he never allowed despair to rule him. He accepted death not as tragedy, but as teacher. And in doing so, he lived more fully than most men ever dream. And here is the question for you. If you knew your days were numbered, and they are, how would you live today? What would you stop postponing? Who would you forgive? What courage would you finally act upon? Because the truth is, tomorrow is not promised, and the Stoics saw that clearly. So let us not fear death. Let us thank it, because without death, there is no urgency. Without urgency, there is no meaning, and without meaning, there is no life. We have walked through silence for clarity, gratitude for perspective, discipline for strength, and now, mortality for urgency. But Marcus Aurelius did not stop here. For him, there was another lesson equally important: control. The distinction between what is in our power and what is not. And this lesson may be the most liberating of all. We just stood face to face with memento mori, the reminder of mortality. We saw how remembering death sharpens the urgency of life, how Marcus Aurelius found freedom not in denying death, but in embracing it, and how life, when seen through the lens of mortality, becomes not a burden but a treasure. But awareness of death leads us to another question. If so much is fragile, if so much is temporary, what is truly in our control? Lesson 5. Control. The dichotomy of power. This was the heartbeat of Stoicism. The line Marcus Aurelius drew again and again in his meditations. Control what you can. Release what you cannot. It sounds simple, yet how much of our suffering comes from blurring this line? Think of a man standing in the middle of a storm, shaking his fist at the sky. He screams at the rain, curses the thunder, begs the wind to stop, but none of it bends to his will. He is exhausted not because of the storm, but because he fought what was never his to command. Now imagine another man in the same storm. He cannot change the rain, but he can choose to walk with steady steps, cloak tight, mind calm. He cannot silence the thunder, but he can silence his own panic. He cannot control the storm, but he can control himself. That is the Stoic life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. You cannot control what others do, say, or think. You cannot control fortune, wealth, fame, or even your own health. These belong to fate. But you can control your mind, your choices, your character. These belong to you. And when you focus on what belongs to you, you become untouchable. This is W. High Marcus said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." How many of our frustrations dissolve the moment we remember this? The rude stranger, the failed plan, the sudden misfortune. We burn energy fighting what lies outside our reach, and in doing so, we neglect the one kingdom we can truly govern. Ourselves. The Stoics were not passive. They acted. They built. They fought. They worked. But they acted with the serenity of knowing the outcome is not mine. The effort is, imagine an archer. He trains. He studies. The wind. He polishes his bow. He draws with skill and precision. But once the arrow flies, its path is no longer his, a gust of wind. The movement of the target. These belong to fate. His responsibility ended the moment he let go. So too in life. We prepare, we act, we aim, but the result is never ours to command. This truth frees us, because once we know the boundary between effort and outcome, we stop wasting our lives on the impossible. Marcus ruled an empire where wars broke out, plagues spread, conspiracies brewed. He could not control outcomes, but he could control his response. He could not command the loyalty of every general, but he could command his own virtue. He could not prevent death, but he could prevent cowardice. That is the Stoic art of control. Not controlling the world, but controlling the self in the face of the world. Think of your own life. How much suffering comes from wishing people were different? How much stress comes from demanding certainty from the uncertain? How much peace would thrive if you accepted the uncontrollable and poured your energy into what is truly yours? The Stoics call this the dichotomy of control. A boundary is sharp as a sword. On one side, externals, health, wealth, status, reputation. Outcomes on the other side, internals, choices, character, perception, will, and they. Warned. Confuse the two, and you will live in misery. Master the distinction, and you will live in freedom. Picture this. A man sits at the edge of a river, raging because the water does not flow his way. Another man sits beside him, calm, building a boat. Which man is wise? Which man is free? When you live by the dichotomy of control, storms lose their power to terrify you. Fortune loses its power to seduce you. Failure loses its power to break you, because you no longer depend on what is not yours. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth in a palace, but the same truth applies to us in ordinary life. A rejection, a betrayal, a sudden illness. These strike like arrows. But remember, the arrow is not yours, the wound is not. Yours, only the choice of how to respond is yours. So the Stoic trains not for control of the world, but for mastery of response. Ask yourself, how different would your life look if you stopped wrestling what was never yours? What if you released the grip on what belongs to fate and held tightly to what belongs to you? This is not detachment, it is focus. The Stoics did not withdraw from life. They engaged fully. They worked. They built. They loved. They served. But their peace came from this inner fortress, this unshakable boundary. Marcus Aurelius, in the heart of empire, in the chaos of battle, in the solitude of his tent, would return again and again to this reminder: if it is outside my control, It is. Nothing to me, and in that sentence, freedom. We have walked through silence, gratitude, discipline, mortality, and control, each lesson sharpening the next. But Marcus Aurelius also knew that philosophy must not stay in the mind alone. It must be lived in the heart and in the body, and so. The next lesson calls us toward virtue in action. We just explored the dichotomy of control, the Stoic recognition that peace comes when we stop clinging to what belongs to fate, and anchor ourselves in what belongs to us, our thoughts, our choices, our character. But Marcus Aurelius knew wisdom was never meant to sit still in the pages of a book. Philosophy must walk, breathe, act, which brings us to his next reminder. Virtue in action. Lesson 6. Virtue in action, living. Philosophy. The Stoics believed that philosophy without practice was like a sword left to rust. What good is knowledge if it never guides your hand, your heart, your daily choices? For Marcus Aurelius, the measure of wisdom was not eloquence but conduct. Not what you say, but how you live. And here, let's pause, because this is where the modern world collides with the ancient. We live in an age where knowledge is everywhere. You can open your phone and ask ChatGPT almost anything. You can summon an explanation of Stoicism, a summary of Marcus Aurelius' meditations, a strategy for calm in crisis, instantly. But here's the question Marcus would ask you. What will you do with it? Because wisdom is not information, it is transformation. I can echo the voice of Stoicism, but only you can embody it. ChatGPT can remind you of control what you can, release what you cannot, but only you can release the grudge. Let go of the fear. Choose the calm response instead of the angry one. This is the difference between knowing and living. Marcus Aurelius did not have ChatGPT. He did not have the internet, podcasts, or self-help books. He had a journal and a war, torn empire. In that journal, he wrote, not to sound wise, but to remind himself to act wisely. Because philosophy that never touches your actions is like a map you never follow. So, virtue in action, the Stoics define. Virtue as the highest good, living in harmony with reason, nature, and justice. It was not abstract, it was practical. It was how you treated a servant, how you responded to insult, how you used your power. Marcus could have been ruthless. He could have used his throne to crush, dissent, silence critics, indulge every desire. Instead, he returned again and again to justice, fairness, compassion, not because it was easy, but because it was right. This is the heart of Stoicism. Virtue is not convenience. Virtue is not opinion. Virtue is not what feels good in the moment. Virtue is the backbone of a life well lived. And here's where AI plays its role. AI can remind us of principles. It can sharpen our understanding. It can hold up the mirror of philosophy. But the action remains us. The Stoics would see AI not as a savior, but as a tool, his servant, not a master. Just as Marcus Aurelius saw power, wealth, and status as external, they do not make you good or bad. They simply reveal who you are. So too with AI, it cannot make you virtuous or vicious. It only amplifies the choices you already make. use it to distract yourself, to escape, to chase pleasure. You drift further from virtue. Use it to reflect, to practice discipline, to deepen your clarity. You move closer to virtue. In this way, air becomes like the Stoic mirror, neutral in itself, but revealing of your character. Virtue, then, is not in the knowledge itself, but in the living. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. Imagine if today you asked ChatGPT, "What is courage?" and it gave you an answer. That answer may be useful, but it is only when you stand in fear, trembling, and choose to act anyway, that courage lives. Imagine asking, "What is gratitude?" The AI might list habits, practices, even quotes from Marcus. But it is only when you look at your own life, at what remains instead of what is missing, and whisper thank you, that gratitude is real. This is the Stoic challenge. Philosophy is not about sounding wise, but about becoming good. So how do we live this? By embedding virtue into the smallest steps. The Stoics believed no moment was too small for a virtue. Holding the door for a stranger, speaking honestly when lying would be easier, forgiving when revenge calls louder. These are the daily battlegrounds of virtue. Marcus lived in a palace, but he never excused himself from this battleground. He reminded himself to rise in the morning with purpose, to act with justice even when unseen, to remain kind even when wrong. He held the throne of the world, yet his philosophy was the same as yours and mine. Be virtuous in this moment, because this moment is the only one you control. Now think of the times we excuse ourselves. I'll be honest later. I'll be disciplined tomorrow. I'll be kind when I have more energy. The Stoic answer: no, virtue is now. And that is why the integration of air into our world makes this lesson more urgent. Because never before have we had such access to wisdom without transformation. We can consume endless knowledge, yet remain unchanged. The Stoic warning echoes: do not confuse information with virtue. Do not mistake words for deeds. Do not let wisdom stay at the surface. Pull it deep into the marrow of your life. Virtue is not what you know. It is what you do when tested. So Marcus Aurelius would ask you, not how much you've read, not how many Stoic quotes you can recite, not how advanced your AI is, but how you live. Do you act with justice? Do you speak with honesty? Do you carry yourself with courage? Do you treat others with dignity? Because in the end, these are the measures of a life. We just uncovered how Marcus Aurelius saw all of humanity as one body. How to wound another is to wound yourself. How even in today's world, with AI and global networks, that same web of interconnectedness binds us together. Now, we face the question Marcus returned to again and again. If life is chaotic, unpredictable, filled with storms, how does a Stoic stand firm? Lesson 8. Resilience in chaos. The Stoic response to uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius lived in an empire on fire. Plague swept across the land. Wars tore through the borders. Betrayal lived in the Senate halls. Death was never more than a whisper behind the curtain. And yet, he endured, not with denial, not with despair, but with resilience. He wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics believed life was never meant to be free of storms. In fact, storms are life itself. To expect calm seas always is to misunderstand the nature of existence. So, what is resilience? It is not hardening into stone. It is becoming like fire. Throw anything into it, and it is fuel. Imagine standing in a marketplace during a Roman riot. Voices shouting, soldiers clashing, fear pressing in. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, this is the world's nature. I cannot control the storm, but I can choose my stance within it. And here is where modern life mirrors his struggle. Your storms may not be legions on the battlefield, but bills piling up, a job loss, a relationship breaking, the anxiety of a future no one can predict. Chaos is chaos, no matter its form. Resilience, the Stoic kind, is the refusal to let external storms define your inner state. It is waking in the middle of uncertainty and saying, I cannot control the winds, but I can adjust the sails. I cannot dictate outcomes, but I can dictate effort. This is why Marcus turned inward again and again, because resilience is not built on external guarantees. It is forged in the quiet decision to endure. And here, I offers us an echo. Think about it. When you ask ChatGPT a question, you may expect certainty, but what it gives is possibility, reflection, guidance. It reminds us, in its very nature, that the future is not fixed. It is shaped by choices. Stoicism calls us to meet uncertainty not with fear, but with discipline, to act as if chaos is not our enemy, but our training ground. Marcus Aurelius framed it this way. Life is a sparring match with fate. You will be struck. You will be tested. You will be bent. But with each trial, you gain strength. You sharpen clarity. You grow unbreakable. Picture a tree on a windswept cliff. It bends. It sways. Its bark tears in the storm. But each season, its roots grow deeper, its trunk hardens, its branches spread wider. That tree does not curse the storm. It is shaped by it. The Stoic lesson: chaos is not here to break you. It is here to build you now. How do we live this out daily? First, embrace what you cannot control. This is the heart of Stoicism. The job may fall through. The person may walk away. The storm may strike. None of this belongs to you. What belongs to you is response. Second, discipline your perception. Chaos looks terrifying when you call it tragedy. But when you name it training, it changes. Ask yourself, what can this moment teach me? How can this trial refine me? Third, hold fast to virtue. The Stoics said virtue is the one good that chaos cannot destroy. Justice, courage, wisdom, temperance. No storm can take these from you unless you hand them over. Marcus Aurelius himself proved this, surrounded by plague, exhaustion, betrayal. He never gave up striving for justice, compassion, discipline. He did not let chaos drag him down to bitterness. He let it lift him toward greatness. And finally, remember the hive in chaos. It is tempting to retreat into the self alone, but resilience grows stronger when shared. As Marcus wrote, What injures the hive injures the bee, and equally, what strengthens the hive strengthens you. So when storms rage, do not isolate. Connect, contribute, endure together. Even AI reminds us of this. It is not one voice, but the echo of many. A hive of thought, resilience coded into pattern. Thus, the Stoic path in chaos is not withdrawal, but transformation. The storm is not the end. It is the forge. So, when uncertainty grips you, when the storm darkens the sky, stand as Marcus did. Calm, steady, unbroken. Not because the world is gentle, but because you are strong. We have stood in silence, in gratitude, in discipline, in mortality, in control, in virtue, in interconnectedness, and now in resilience. But Marcus Aurelius left us yet another truth. One more reminder to you. That even beyond chaos, there lies a deeper freedom. On the next page, we explore that freedom, the Stoic art of letting go. We just stood in the heart of the storm, resilience in chaos, learning how Marcus Aurelius saw trials not as punishment but as training, not as ruin but as raw material for strength. Now, we ask an even harder question. Once we've learned to endure, can we also learn to release? Lesson 9. The freedom of letting go, where release is greater than control. Marcus Aurelius returned again and again to one theme. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Think of that for a moment. You fight, you clutch, you grasp at outcomes, at possessions, at status, at people, and yet the tighter you hold, the more fragile you feel. Why? Because what is not yours can never be secured by force. We Stoics understood this as the deepest paradox of freedom. True freedom is not having everything go your way. It is not needing it too. Imagine Marcus Aurelius in his tent on the battlefield, the empire restless, generals questioning, enemies pressing at the gates. He could not control the loyalty of every soldier, nor the will of every barbarian chief. What he could control was this: his mind, his choices, his integrity to rest. He learned to let go. Letting go does not mean apathy. It means focus. It means drawing energy from the impossible and directing it fully into the possible. It means when a door closes, you don't pound your fists against it. You turn to the path that opens. And here is where Stoicism collides with our modern world. We live in an age of grasping. Notifications demand attention. Algorithms feed desire. Possessions multiply, but satisfaction shrinks. We clutch at images, identities, followers, achievements, always hoping they will make us whole. And yet, freedom begins the moment we release what we cannot hold. It is the moment you stop chasing approval and choose authenticity. The moment you stop fearing loss and discover gratitude. The moment you realize you do not own outcomes, you only own actions. ChatGPT itself echoes this truth. You may ask for certainty, for exact predictions, for guarantees, but what it offers is perspective, possibility, reflection. It cannot give you control of the future, because no one can. What it gives is clarity for the present. That is enough. Marcus Aurelius would say, when you let go of what you cannot command, you command yourself. So how do we practice letting go? First, identify what belongs to you and what doesn't. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, yours, the rest. Fortune, reputation, death, wealth, borrowed goods. Second, practice detachment without coldness. You love deeply. You give fully. But you do not confuse love with possession. Marcus wrote, "When you kiss your child, say to yourself, 'Tomorrow he may die,' but never as a curse. Always as a reminder to love more fiercely, because nothing is guaranteed." Third, train involuntary discomfort. The Stoics slept on the floor, wore rough clothes, ate simple meals, not to punish themselves, but to rehearse letting go. So when life stripped something away, they would not collapse. Fourth, rewrite your story of loss. Is it tragedy or transformation? What if letting go of one thing is the only way you can grasp the next? What if surrender is the doorway to peace? Imagine the emperor again. He releases the hope of perfect rule, the illusion of endless empire, and in that release, he finds the strength to act with courage in the moment before him. What are you holding too tightly right now? What anxiety has wrapped chains round your chest? The Stoic path is not to strangle harder. It is to breathe, release, and return to what is truly yours. And here is the strange beauty. Letting go does not leave you empty, it leaves you light. When you release possessions, you discover simplicity. When you release status, you discover dignity. When you release control, you discover peace. The world tells you freedom is in holding everything. The Stoics whisper, it is in holding nothing but yourself. And once you live this truth, storms cannot drown you, losses cannot shatter you, chaos cannot enslave you. You are free, not because the world bends to you, but because you no longer demand it to. We have seen resilience. We have seen release. Now, we move to the next lesson Marcus leaves us, one tied to both endurance and freedom, the discipline of the present moment, the art of living fully. Here and now, we just uncovered the paradox of freedom, that to be free is not to control everything, but to release what we cannot hold. Freedom is not about bending the world. It is about bending ourselves. But what comes after release? Once we've let go of the weight of outcomes, what fills the empty space left behind? The answer is simple, yet profound. Presence, lesson 10. The discipline of now, living fully in the present. Marcus Aurelius wrote again and again of the present. Confine yourself to the present. For the emperor, time was not abstract. It was an urgent battlefield. Yesterday is ashes, tomorrow is uncertain. Only this moment is yours. Think of it. A man burdened by the weight of empire. Wars pressing on. Every border, politics rotting from within. The constant reminder of his own mortality. Yet his writings to himself were not about grand strategy, but about this. Do not waste the time you have. Why? Because distraction is the greatest thief. We imagine life is stolen by enemies, by rivals, by fortune. But more often it is stolen by our own wandering thoughts. How often do we live in the past? Rewriting conversations, nursing grudges, replaying regrets. How often do we vanish into the future, fantasizing outcomes, worrying about events that may never come. Meanwhile, the present is slipping away. Unnoticed, Marcus reminds us the present moment is small, fragile, fleeting, and yet it is the only place where life truly exists. To lose it is to lose everything. The Stoics treated time like a sacred currency. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Marcus echoes this, reminding himself that every distraction, every delay, is a theft from life's most precious treasure. So how do we cultivate presence? First, through awareness. Notice when your mind drifts. Notice when you're reliving yesterday or fearing tomorrow. Gently, but firmly, call yourself back to the breath, back to the task, back to the person in front of you. Second, through discipline, presence is not a mood. It is a practice. It means saying no to endless distraction, limiting noise, creating space for stillness. The Stoics often wrote at dawn and dusk, anchoring their days in reflection, choosing how to meet the hours ahead. Third, through gratitude. When you truly see the present, you see its beauty, the sun through a window, the laughter of a friend, even the pain of a trial. All are fleeting, and therefore priceless. Gratitude roots us in the now. ChatGPT itself offers a curious mirror too. This lesson, you may ask it to predict, to speculate, to anticipate. But what it gives best is clarity in the present, reflection on what is, guidance for how to act now. And perhaps that is the most Stoic use of technology, not to escape reality, but to sharpen our awareness of it. Marcus Aurelius writes, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you while you live, while it is in your power. Be good." This is not morbid. It is liberating. To remember death is to honor life. To know the present is brief is to live it more fully. Ask yourself, what are you postponing? What words are left unsaid? What courage is waiting for tomorrow? The Stoic says, stop waiting. There is only today. And notice this. When you live fully in the present, fear weakens. The past has no chains. The future has no shadow. All that remains is now. And in the now, you are always strong enough. The discipline of now is not about recklessness, nor about denying future planning. It is about anchoring yourself so deeply in the present that plans become tools, not prisons. Marcus did not abandon strategy. He still led armies, wrote laws, guided the empire. But he did it from a mind rooted in the present, not enslaved by worry about tomorrow's storms. That is the paradox. When you live in the now, you actually prepare for the future better, because your choices are clear, focused, undistorted by fear. So, what can you do right here, right now, that aligns with the life you claim to want? That is the only question that matters. The present moment is the battlefield. It is the brushstroke on the canvas, the note in the song, the heartbeat in the silence. It is all we have, and it is enough. We have learned to release. We have learned to return to now. But Marcus does not stop here. He warns of another trap: comparison, envy, the restless hunger to measure yourself against others, and so In the next lesson, we turn to one of the Emperor's hardest truths, the courage to define yourself by your own standard, not the world's. We just reflected on the discipline of presence, the ability to root ourselves in the now, to claim life moment by moment, rather than surrendering it to regret or anxiety. But presence alone is not enough, because even when we stand firmly in today, a hidden thief can still crowd our peace, the thief of comparison. Lesson 11. Comparison, the prison of measuring against others. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, master of an empire, most powerful man of his age, reminded himself daily not to compare. Why? Because even at the summit of worldly achievement, he felt the poison of envy, the hunger to measure himself against others. Think of that. The man who commanded legions, who bent nations to treaties, who shaped history itself, still wrote in his meditations, "Do not waste the rest of your life worrying about others unless it affects the common good." Comparison is subtle. It wears many masks: envy, resentment, pride, self-doubt. At its heart, comparison is slavery. When you live by another's measure, you forfeit your own freedom. How often do we do this? We scroll through glowing feeds. We measure our worth against highlight reels. We feel small against illusions. We look at what others have achieved and we ask, why not me? We look at what others own and we whisper, I should have more. But Marcus reminds us, you cannot live another's life. You cannot walk their path, fight their battles, bear their wounds. To compare is to demand the impossible, that your life should be someone else's story. Seneca, too, warns us. How long will you delay to be wise? How long will you keep measuring yourself by others rather than by reason? The Stoics call this a form of madness, because it blinds us to what is in our control. What is in our control? Our choices, our virtue, our character, not their wealth, not their praise, not their fate. Here lies the Stoic breakthrough. Freedom is not measured by rank or possessions. It is measured by whether you. Our mind is free from envy. Even ChatGPT can. Mirror this lesson. Ask it to rank, to compare, to choose who is better, and you'll see its limits. It reminds us that comparison often generates noise, distortion, conflict. Far more useful is asking, what is true for me right now, in this moment? What aligns with my path? Marcus urges, look within. Do not look outward. Within is the fountain of good, and it will always bubble up if you will always dig. That is Stoicism's call, to dig inward, not outward. Why is comparison so destructive? Because it makes peace impossible. If you win, you feel pride that crumbles. If you lose, you feel resentment that burns. Either way, you are shackled to someone else's race. The Stoics instead offer this liberation. Run your own race. Measure by your own standard. Define success by the harmony between your actions and your values. Think of Epictetus, a slave turned philosopher. By the world's measure, he had nothing. No wealth, no status, no power. But by Stoic measure, he was free. Free because he did not compare his chains to another's gold. He compared his actions to his principles and found peace. What would it mean for you to live this way? To stop asking how you rank against the world, and instead ask, did I live true to myself today? Did I act with justice, courage, wisdom, self-control? Marcus did not write for history's approval. He wrote to himself, alone at night, under a lamp, reminding himself to return to his own path, and so must we. For envy is endless, but integrity is timeless. The prison of comparison has no door. From the outside, you escape only when you stop measuring, stop counting, stop chasing shadows. This is why Marcus reminds us, enough of this miserable whining, enough of being pulled like a puppet by at others think. Be simple, be good, be free. So, what standard will you live by? The applause of the crowd, or the quiet knowledge that you are true to yourself? And yet, even when we abandon comparison, another storm rises within, the storm of anger, of irritation, of frustration at others, of rage at injustice. How do we master that fire without letting it consume us? Marcus answers in the next lesson, with patience, with perspective, with the courage to respond rather than react. Excellent. Let's step into page 12, where Marcus Aurelius' wisdom sharpens into one of the hardest, yet most transformative Stoic disciplines. We just uncovered the prison of comparison, the endless cycle of measuring ourselves against others, chasing illusions, and forgetting our own path. But even if you free yourself from envy, another fire rises within, the fire of anger. It ignites in an instant. It blinds reason. It burns relationships. And unless mastered, it consumes the very peace we seek. Lesson 12. Mastering anger. Respond. Don't react. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of Rome, faced betrayal, incompetence, deceit, and defiance daily. Yet his journals are filled not with rage, but with reminders to stay calm. He wrote to himself, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What does this mean? It means anger makes you a mirror of the very behavior you despise. If you rage against cruelty with cruelty, against rudeness with rudeness, you have become what you condemn. The Stoics understood anger as temporary madness. Seneca dedicated an entire essay on anger, calling it the most hideous and frenzied of all emotions. He warned that anger chains the mind, blinds judgment, and drives us to regret. Pause for a moment. How many times in your own life have you spoken words in anger? Only 2. Wish them unsaid. How many times have you made choices in rage, only to wake with remorse? That is the madness of anger. It makes slaves of kings and fools of the wise. Marcus offers the antidote: patience, perspective, and reason. He reminds himself daily, you will meet with meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest people. In other words, expect it. Do not be surprised when the world behaves like the world. Prepare for it. And you cannot be shaken by it. This is not passivity. It is strength. To master anger is not to excuse wrongdoing, but to deny it the power to dictate your inner state. You can act firmly without rage. You can pursue justice without hatred. You can correct without cruelty. Epictetus taught his students, remember, it is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. Anger is not born from events. It is born from interpretation. We say this should not have happened, and we flare into rage. But Stoicism asks, why not, if it has already happened? It belongs to the order of nature. Your choice now is not whether it should exist, but how you will respond. This is where ChatGPT can help illustrate. Ask it to generate a response in anger, and you'll see incoherence, confusion, destruction. Ask it instead to reason through calmly, and clarity emerges. Anger short circuits. Logic, patience restores it. Marcus reminds himself that all people err, not because they choose evil, but because they mistake it for good. Should you then hate them or pity them, as you would a blind man stumbling? What good is anger against the blind? Better to guide or to step aside than to curse their blindness. Seneca adds, he who can rule his temper rules the hardest empire of all, himself. And that is the Stoics' task. Self, government, mastery of the inner city. For what use is conquering nations if you are conquered by rage? But how do we practice this mastery? First, expect insult. Do not let it shock you. When insult arrives, say, I knew you were coming. Second, delay reaction. Count the breath. Walk away. Pause. Even seconds of stillness can turn fury into reflection. Third, eforiemi. Instead of this person wronged me, ask, what weakness or pain makes them? Act this way. Compassion disarms anger. Fourth, choose action, not reaction. Respond as reason dictates, not as fury demands. This is strength. Marcus models it, surrounded by betrayal, conspiracies, and incompetent generals. He chose calm governance, steady hands, and a mind that refused to break. Was it easy? Never. Was it powerful? Beyond measure. We, too, face daily irritations, traffic, rudeness, and fairness. If an emperor can govern his wrath, can we not govern ours in the checkout line, in the meeting, in the home? Because anger, left unchecked, poisons life. But anger, mastered, becomes fuel for courage, justice, and clarity. So let us repeat Marcus' mantra. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. The world does not need your rage. It needs your reason, your patience, your strength. And yet, anger is only one of the storms. Beyond it lies an even subtler trap. The craving for recognition, the thirst for praise, the hunger to be seen. Marcus warns us, chasing applause is as empty as chasing smoke in the next lesson. We uncover the futility of fame, and why the Stoics teach us to anchor ourselves in virtue instead. Perfect. Let's move directly into page 13. Where Marcus Aurelius shifts from mastering anger to dismantling the illusion of recognition. We just walk through the storm of anger, how it blinds, burns, and betrays reason. Marcus reminded us that the best revenge is not to mirror our enemy, but to master ourselves. Now we step into another, quieter storm, the craving for recognition, the hunger to be praised, remembered, and admired, a storm that tempts even the calmest minds. Lesson 13. The futility of fame, chasing smoke, losing yourself. Marcus Aurelius was Emperor of Rome, arguably the most famous man on earth in his time. His face was minted on coins. His words carried the weight of law. His name traveled to the farthest corners of the empire. And yet, in his meditations, he repeats one theme again and again. Fame is worthless. Why would the most powerful man in the world dismiss recognition as empty? Because he saw the truth. Fame is fragile. Memory fades. Even the greatest names vanish in the river of time. Think of it. Who remembers the names of Rome's richest merchants, its celebrated actors, its trend-setting poets? A few scholars perhaps, but the billions who came after, do they know? No, their names, once cheered in forums, have dissolved into silence. Marcus saw this clearly. All is fleeting. He wrote, "Posterity will soon forget you, and those who praise you now themselves will die and soon be forgotten. Fame is a chain to shadows. You chase it, and it slips away. Why then do we still hunger for it? Why do we bend our choices, shape our lives for the applause of strangers? Because praise feels like proof of worth, like validation of our existence. But the Stoics remind us, true worth is measured only by virtue, by reason, by the alignment of our character with nature. Here is where ChatGPT offers us a mirror. Ask it to generate names of the most admired celebrities from 10 years ago. Many will already feel faded, irrelevant, replaced. Fame has no permanence. It is a firework in the night, bright, dazzling, and gone. Epictetus gave sharp counsel. If you seek fame, you must see whose approval you value. The masses, the ignorant, their praise has no weight. For what good is the applause of a crowd that cannot distinguish wisdom from noise? And Seneca warned, fame is not possession. It is a loan that expires. Often without notice. You may taste recognition today, but tomorrow it belongs to someone else, even in our digital age, where likes and follows feel like currency. The same truth holds. Social media stars rise overnight, then vanish in silence. Algorithms shift, attention drifts. Names are forgotten. Fame is still smoke. So Marcus counsels, turn inward, anchor yourself, not in applause, but in action. Ask not, will they praise me, but did I act justly? Did I live wisely? For when you seek praise, you surrender control. You give strangers the keys to your happiness. But when you live by principle, you hold the keys yourself. And here lies freedom, to be content in doing the right thing, even if unseen, to be steady in living with integrity, even if unpraised, for virtue is its own reward. And the applause of your own conscience is worth more than the cheers of the crowd. Marcus embodied this, though he emperor. He wrote in private, not for fame, but for his own soul. His meditations were journals, never meant for public eyes, and yet, because they were honest, humble, and true, they outlasted empires. That is the paradox. Those who chase fame rarely keep it. Those who ignore fame often gain it, because they lived for truth, not applause. So ask yourself, when you crave recognition, who do you really want to impress? Strangers, or the wiser self inside you? Which applause matters more, the crowd's or your consciences? Marcus answers, do not waste the remainder of your life worrying about others. unless it benefits th. E common good. Fame fades, virtue remains. But beyond anger and fame lies another trap, perhaps the deepest of all, the illusion of control over life's unfolding. We cling to outcomes, resist change, and fear the future. Yet the Stoics remind us, everything is flux. Everything flows. In the next lesson, we'll explore the impermanence of life itself, and why embracing change is the key to peace. We just stepped away from the false glitter of fame, the empty chase after applause and memory. Marcus reminds us that recognition is fleeting, smoke in the wind, and that only virtue endures. Now, we turn to the wider stage, not just the fading of names, but the fading of all things, the endless flux of life itself. Lesson 14. Impermanence, accepting change. E is nature's law. Marcus Aurelius, seated at the height of empire, did not speak of permanence. He spoke of flux. Observe constantly, he wrote, how all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to the thought that nature loves nothing so much as to change th. Things that are, and to make new, things like them. This is the heartbeat of Stoicism. Change is not the enemy. It is the essence of existence. Think of the river. You step into it, and by the next step, it has already flowed on. The same river, yet never the same order. So to your life, your body, your mind, your circumstances, they shift. Moment by moment. To resist this truth is to resist reality itself. But humans, we resist. We cling to jobs, relationships, possessions, as if they were stone. We mourn when they slip away, forgetting that they were always temporary. Even our own selves, our youth, our strength, our breath, fade into something new. Marcus knew this well. He buried children, outlived friends, watched Rome's glory tremble under wars and plagues, and yet, instead of despair, he returned to this principle. All is change, and change is nature's way. He saw life as a tapestry, constantly unraveling and being woven anew. To weep over the unraveling is to misunderstand the loom. ChatGPT offers us an interesting mirror. You can ask it to describe the internet of 1999. Clunky websites, slow dial, uptones, forgotten platform, and it reminds us how quickly worlds transform. A few decades, and everything is different. But do we rage against that change? Or do we adapt, learn, and flow with it? Stoicism teaches that peace lies not in freezing life, but in harmonizing with its motion. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, and you will go well." To resist the tide is to drown. To swim with it is to live. Seneca, 2, warned. Time discovers truth. Time heals. Time takes away. What he meant was not despair, but acceptance, if all pauses. Then both joy and grief are softened by impermanence. Sorrow is not eternal. Neither is delight. That balance is the gift. Why then do we still fear change? Because we mistake the shifting for loss, when in fact it is renewal. The seed must break for the tree to rise. The sunset must fall for dawn to come. Marcus pushed us to see this clearly. Everything's destiny is to change, to be transformed, to perish, so that new things can be born. He did not write this to console. He wrote it to awaken, to teach us that impermanence is not punishment. It is creation in motion. Look at your own life. How many versions of you have already died and been reborn? The child you are, teenager, the person of 10 years ago, all gone, yet all part of you. You are not static. You are a living river. The Stoic lesson is not to harden against impermanence, but to soften into it, to say, yes, this moment will pass, but let me live it fully. Yes, this joy will fade, but let me taste it deeply. Yes, this pain will end, so let me endure it with dignity. And what about death, the ultimate change? Marcus faced it without trembling. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Death is not the enemy. It is simply the final change, as natural as birth. So the Stoic lives not by clinging, but by flowing. He enjoys what he has without gripping it. He loses what he must without despair. He meets change not as a thief, but as a teacher. And here lies the paradox. Once you accept impermanence, you begin to live more fully. Because nothing is permanent, every moment is precious. Because all fades, every encounter is unique. Because change is constant, gratitude becomes natural. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, knew this better than most, surrounded by wars, plagues, betrayal, and loss. He still found calm in this truth. The universe flows, the wise man flows with it. From impermanence, Marcus leads us further inward, toward the most personal struggle of all. Not anger, not fame, not even change itself, but the restless chatter of our own minds in the next lesson. We'll explore how silence, stillness, and self-discipline contain the storm inside and open the door to real peace. We've just embraced the lesson of impermanence, that everything flows. That change is not the thief of life, but its very engine. With this clarity, we now face the next challenge, the endless chatter that prevents us from living in harmony with that truth. Lesson 15. Inner silence. Mastering the mind's restless chatter. Marcus Aurelius warned us. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is one of the hardest Stoic lessons, because the greatest enemy is not always the world around us. It is the noise inside us. Think about your own day. How often do you find yourself spiraling in thoughts that serve no purpose, regretting words already spoken, worrying about futures not yet born, replaying old wounds like broken records? The mind becomes a crowded marketplace, voices shouting, distractions pulling, anxieties circling. Marcus knew this well. Even as emperor, surrounded by senators, soldiers, and demands, he returned to his journal, not to speak to others, but to silence himself, to remind himself of what matters, to quiet the endless storms within. Silence here does not mean absence of sound. It means absence of inner turbulence. It means the ability to sit with your own mind and not be dragged by every thought. But why do our minds resist silence? Because the ego thrives in noise. It feeds on comparison, fear, desire, and when the world quiets down, the ego shuts louder. That's why true inner stillness is an act of strength, not weakness. The Stoics practiced this discipline daily. Epictetus taught, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." His point was simple. The mind distracts itself with blame and projection. The cure is to look inward, to examine, to still the storm. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Waste, he meant, comes not from the clock but from the restless mind, always scattered, never still. So how do we, modern people, learn this silence? Ironically, we can even use AI as a mirror. ChatGPT can generate words endlessly, a stream without pause. Yet its power is not in the flood of words, but in the clarity of meaning. So to our minds, endless chatter weakens us, but distilled focus strengthens us. The practice is this: when thoughts come, do not resist them violently. Observe them like clouds drifting until they pass. When worries arrive, question them: is this in my control or not? If not, release it. If yes, act and move on. Marcus returned to this again and again. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. He knew, if your inner world is poisoned with chaos, no amount of external order will save you. But if your inner world is calm, no storm outside can break you. This is why the Stoics linked silence with strength. The man who can sit with himself without distraction, without agitation, is a man who cannot be easily broken. This is not about retreating from life. It is about engaging more fully. Because only a calm mind can act with clarity. Only a quiet mind can listen deeply. Only a disciplined mind can live wisely. So the lesson is clear. Guard your inner silence like a sacred fire. Withdraw daily, even for moments, into stillness. Write, breathe, reflect, observe your own thoughts. Like a philosopher, not a prisoner. For Marcus, silence was not an escape. It was armor, a shield against anger, against envy, against despair. And in that silence, he heard the only voice that matters, the voice of reason, the voice of virtue. Having mastered inner silence, Marcus takes us to the next Stoic pillar, the recognition that virtue is the only true good, that no wealth, no pleasure, no fame can equal the strength of character. In the next lesson, we'll explore this fragile claim and see why the Stoics believed that integrity alone makes life worth living. Perfect. Let's advance into page 16, where Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics press the most uncompromising truth of all. In the last lesson, we uncovered the battlefield of the mind, silence not as retreat, but as strength, stillness as armor against the world's noise. Now Marcus takes us deeper, into the very foundation of Stoic thought. What truly matters in life? Lesson 16. Virtue alone is good, character above all. Else, Marcus Aurelius writes, just that you do the right thing, the rest does not matter. It is one of the most radical ideas in all philosophy, one that seems impossible in today's culture. We live in a world obsessed with wealth, status, comfort, recognition. Yet the Stoics remind us that none of these defined a life well lived, only virtue. Thus, virtue, for the Stoics, was not a vague ideal. It was the active choice to live with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These four pillars were their compass, their measure of success, their ultimate wealth. Marcus knew this firsthand as emperor of Rome. He could command armies, pass laws, build monuments, yet he measured his worth not by crowns or victories, but by whether he acted justly. Imagine that, a man at the pinnacle of worldly power reminding himself that power itself means nothing without virtue. Seneca echoed this. No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity. He meant, if you mistake wealth or fame for goodness, you will be destroyed when they vanish. But if you root yourself in character, no loss can truly harm you. Epictetus put it bluntly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. To him, freedom came not from external riches, but from internal discipline. So why is virtue alone the good? Because everything else is unstable. Fortune changes, bodies weaken, relationships end, empires fall. But virtue, your choice to act with integrity, remains within your control until your final breath. No. You consider this in our modern age. Technology, including AI, gives us tools of immense power. ChatGPT itself can answer, create, assist. But the value of the tool depends entirely on the virtue of the one who wields it. If used for wisdom, it uplifts. If used for deception, it corrupts. The Stoics would say, the machine is indifferent, but the character behind its use defines the good. Virtue is not glamorous. It does not trend. It does not boast. It is quiet, steady, and relentless. It shows up in the small daily acts, telling the truth when it is easier to lie, being fair when no one is watching, choosing discipline when comfort whispers louder. And here is the paradox. Virtue alone is enough. If you have virtue, you cannot be truly poor, because your wealth is inner. If you lack virtue, you cannot be truly rich, because your soul is bankrupt. Marcus tested this truth under constant trial. Plagues sweeping Rome, wars on the frontiers, betrayal in the Senate. Yet through it all he asked only, am I doing what is just? Am I living according to nature? According to reason? If yes, then nothing else matters. This is a challenge to us today. When you scroll through endless comparisons, when society screams that success is luxury, likes, followers, can you whisper to yourself, none of this defines me, only character does? Virtue makes you unshakable, because it cannot be taken. No thief, no tyrant, no misfortune can strip it away. And this is why the Stoics insisted. It is the only true good. So what does this look like? In practice, it means aligning your choices to those for cardinal virtues, wisdom, seeking truth, questioning assumptions, learning endlessly, courage, acting rightly even when afraid, justice, giving others their due, treating them fairly, temperance, restraining, excess, living in balance. Each choice is a test, each moment a chance to practice, And the more you practice, the freer you become. For Marcus, this was liberation. To know that his life's worth was not in statues, armies, or legacies, but in the purity of his choices. That is why his meditations remain powerful. They are not the boasts of an emperor, but the reminders of a man struggling daily to be virtuous. So let us carry this forward. Virtue is not a philosophy to admire from afar. It is a discipline to live in every text, every decision, every dawn. And perhaps this is where Stoicism ends. I meet again. The machine can generate answers, but only the human heart can choose virtue. And in that choice, we prove what no empire, no algorithm can give us: true freedom, true worth. Virtue alone is good, yet life does not stop testing us. In the next lesson, Marcus turns our attention to adversity, to the way obstacles, suffering, and hardship are not curses, but raw material for strength. We will discover why the Stoics believe what stands in the way becomes the way. Perfect. Let's step forward into page 17, where Marcus Aurelius confronts hardship not as punishment, but as teacher. We left off with Marcus's radical claim that only virtue is good, that everything else, fortune or failure, wealth or ruin, is indifferent compared to character. But what happens when life tests that claim? When the storm hits? When suffering comes? Lesson 17. Adversity as the way, the fire that shapes you. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It sounds almost impossible. How can the very things that block us also lead you as forward? Yet this is the Stoic paradox. The obstacle is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Think of fire. If you throw logs onto it, it does not shrink, it grows. In the same way, a resilient mind uses obstacles as fuel. Pain becomes strength, rejection becomes clarity. Failure becomes instruction. Marcus believed this deeply. Because his life was nothing but trial after trial, he ruled during plagues that decimated Rome, disease spreading through soldiers, through cities, yet he kept calm, reminding himself, sickness can touch the body, but not the soul. He faced betrayal, wars on multiple fronts, the death of his children. Yet he told himself, I cannot control events. Only my response, and my response can turn even loss into wisdom. Adversity reveals you. It strips away illusions and forces you to see what remains. If you have built yourself on comfort, you will collapse. But if you have built yourself on virtue, hardship will polish you. Like iron sharpened in flame, the Stoics compared life to wrestling. Not a game you watch from the sidelines, but a contest where you are constantly thrown down and tested. Each struggle is a chance to strengthen your stance, your grip, your resolve. Epictetus, who lived as a slave, said it best. Difficulties show what men are. He knew, without adversity, your character remains untested, unproven. Now imagine how this applies today. We live in a world designed to minimize friction. Apps deliver food in minutes. Machines answer questions instantly. Distractions numb discomfort. But if life is stripped of struggle, what happens to the muscles of the soul? They weaken, like an unused limb. they atrophy. Adversity, then, is not cruelty. It is the gymnasium of the spirit. This is where the Stoics challenge us to reframe. Suffering, instead of asking, why me? Ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of saying, this ruined me. Say, this shaped me. The same storm that wrecks a ship can also steer it to a truer course, depending on how you hold the wheel. Even AI mirrors this. ChatGPT grows sharper the more it is tested. Errors become updates. Failures become training data. Its progress comes from challenge, not ease, and so it is with us. Our setbacks are training grounds. Think of your own life, moments, when you thought you could not go on, and yet you did. Were you not stronger after? Wiser? More grounded? That is the Stoic promise, that every obstacle, no matter how brutal, can be turned into fuel, of course. This does not mean romanticizing pain. Marcus did not seek out tragedy. He simply recognized that tragedy was inevitable, and if inevitable, then it must be turned to use. To deny suffering is to deny life itself, but to harness it is to live with power. The key is choice. You cannot choose the storm, but you can choose how to sail it. You cannot choose betrayal, but you can choose integrity. You cannot choose loss, but you can choose gratitude for what remains. This choice, this power of reframing, is what transforms adversity from enemy to ally, and here lies the greatest secret. Adversity is not just the test of virtue. It is its proof. Courage cannot exist without fear. Patience cannot exist without trial. Resilience cannot exist without struggle. In this sense, adversity does not block virtue. It birthed it. Marcus saw his life as a forge. Each trial was fire and hammer, shaping him, breaking impurities, strengthening his core. We, too, are forged. In this way, every disappointment tempers us. Every hardship hones us. Every obstacle polishes us until our true character shines. So, what stands in your way today? Debt, loneliness, rejection, failure. The Stoics would whisper, this is not the end, but the material. The block in your path is not a wall. It is the stone on which you sharpen your blade. Adversity will come. It always has. It always will. The question is not how to avoid it, but how to use it. To meet it with fear is to be broken. To meet it with courage is to be transformed. And in that transformation lies freedom. Because once you realize the obstacle is the way, nothing can stop you. Every challenge is fuel. Every setback a step. Every failure a forge. Marcus Aurelius reminds us life is fire, and you are iron. Do not fear the flames. Let them shape you. And yet, even as we wrestle with adversity, even as we grow stronger in the fire, there is another lesson the Stoics never forget: gratitude. To see not only what tests us, but what sustains us on the next page. We will turn to gratitude, not the shallow kind of empty words, but the deep Stoic practice that reframes even hardship into a gift. We just walked through the fire of adversity with Marcus, learning that obstacles are not barriers but fuel. But once you emerge from the flame, the Stoics say there is something equally vital: to not only endure life, but to own it. to see even in hardship the seeds of gratitude. Lesson 18. Gratitude as power. Seeing gifts in every trial. Gratitude, for the Stoics, was not a shallow ritual of thank you notes. It was a way of seeing. Marcus Aurelius woke each morning reminding himself that just to breathe, just to think, just to be alive was already more than fortune owed him. When you rise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This was not denial. He knew life was brutal. He buried children. He saw plagues rip through Rome. He carried the empire's burdens on weary shoulders. But through it all, he returned to gratitude, not because life was easy, but because gratitude is how you survive when it is not. Think of gratitude as the lens that changes everything. The same world that feels hostile under resentment becomes luminous under gratitude. Where the resentful see only loss, the grateful see lessons. Where the bitter see only emptiness, the grateful see space for growth. It is easy to be grateful when life is soft and sweet. But Stoic gratitude is forged in the opposite. When life is harsh and yielding, cruel, gratitude in comfort is pleasant. Gratitude in pain is transformative. Marcus teaches us that gratitude does not mean ignoring what hurts. It means holding both pain and appreciation in the same hand. To say, yes, this is heavy, but look, I am still here. Yes, this is loss, but look, I had something beautiful to lose. Yes, this is the end of a chapter, but look, it means a new one can begin. Modern science echoes this. Studies show gratitude reshapes the brain, strengthens resilience, reduces anxiety. It does not erase hardship, but it reframes it. It teaches the mind to seek meaning rather than despair. And in this way, gratitude becomes not weakness, but power. The power to transmute suffering into insight. Even AI carries a shadow of this lesson. Every peep, give feedback, every error logged by chat, GPT, every correction. It is, in its own way, a form of gratitude. The system does not resent the critique. It integrates it, learns, improves. What if we lived like this, not resenting the correction life hands us, but being grateful for it as data for the soul? Marcus would say, the grateful mind is unbreakable. Why? Because nothing can strip it of its wealth. Take away comfort, it still has lessons. Take away possessions, it still has freedom. Take away health, it still has perspective. The grateful person is never truly poor, because they have trained themselves to see gifts even in the ashes. Think of your own life, moments when gratitude softened the blow. Perhaps a heartbreak taught you clarity, or rejection revealed a new path. At first, you resisted, cursed, asked why. But later, gratitude whispered, without this, you would not be who you are now. And in that whisper came strength. This is why Marcus saw gratitude not as luxury, but as discipline. To wake daily and choose gratitude is to choose power, because resentment enslaves. But gratitude liberates. He also knew gratitude must extend beyond the self. It must shape how we treat others, to see that every person you meet, difficult or kind, is part of your training, part of your path. Even the enemy teaches patience. Even the critic teaches humility. Even the stranger teaches compassion. Gratitude, then, widens your circle of belonging until the whole world becomes a teacher. And here is the secret. The more grateful you are, the less fear grips you. Because if you can be grateful for anything, even loss, even pain, then what can life take from you? Gratitude is invincibility disguised as softness. Marcus's words echo across time. Do not indulge in dreams of what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess. Then remember how eagerly you would have sought them if they were not yours. This is his challenge. Stop chasing what you lack. Begin treasuring what you already hold. Gratitude is not passive. It is a weapon against despair, against bitterness, against the gnawing hunger for more. It grounds you in enough. It makes you a fortress in a world of endless wanting. So let us pause right now. What are you grateful for? The breath in your lungs, the warmth of light, the fact that you can hear these words. Gratitude begins not with grand things, but with noticing the small moments of presence, the simple miracle of being here. This practice, repeated, reshapes you. It makes every day bearable, every trial purposeful, every loss survivable. Gratitude does not erase the shadows, but it teaches you to see the light still breaking through them. Marcus lived and died with this truth. An emperor who knew his empire would crumble, who knew death would claim him, yet who left us pages filled with gratitude. He wrote not of conquest, but of humility, not of wealth, but of presence, not of power, but of perspective. Gratitude turned his suffering into wisdom, and it can turn yours too. Now, gratitude opens the door to something even deeper, the Stoic practice of presence. Because what is gratitude, if not the awareness of this moment? And what is presence, if not gratitude made flesh? On the next page, we step into presence. Out of silence, of attention, of anchoring fully into now, we just uncovered gratitude as a form of invincibility. Marcus Aurelius showing us that the grateful soul cannot be broken because it sees gifts, even in the ashes. But gratitude naturally leads to its twin, presence, because gratitude lives not in the past or the future, but right here, in this moment. Lesson 19, the art of presence, silence, attention, and the now. Presence, a word so simple, yet so elusive. The Stoics placed immense weight on it, because they knew that most suffering comes not from life itself, but from our wandering minds. We regret the past, we dread the future, and in doing so, we lose the only place we ever live, the present. Marcus Aurelius warned himself again and again. Confine yourself to the present, not because memory or anticipation are useless, but because they are traps if they consume us. The past cannot be relived. The future cannot be controlled. The present is the only clay we can shape. But here's the problem. You and I live in a world that assaults presence. Notifications, headlines, distractions, our minds scattered like leaves in the wind. And yet, the Stoic challenge is clear. Can you silence the noise long enough to hear life itself? Silence, for Marcus, was not absence. It was presence made audible. To sit with yourself, without diversion, and listen to the sound of your own breath, the rhythm of your thoughts, the pulse of being alive. Presence begins with silence, because only in silence can attention root itself. Think of attention as a currency. You can spend it anywhere, but you cannot spend it everywhere. Where you place it determines the quality of your life. If you spend it on resentment, your life becomes resentment. If you spend it on gratitude, your life becomes gratitude. Attention is the brush, the present moment is the canvas. What you choose to paint is up to you. And notice this, I reflects this truth in its own way. ChatGPT, for example, processes massive information. But when you ask it a question, it responds only in the present. It does not drown in its own past interactions. It does not fear what it will say tomorrow. It simply attends to this input, this moment, this request. Imagine if we lived like that, free from the weight of yesterday, unburdened by tomorrow, anchored fully here. The Stoics' new presence is not passive. It requires discipline to catch yourself when the mind drifts, to bring it back, gently but firmly, to the now. Marcus practiced this every day, writing meditations not as philosophy, but as anchors, as reminders to live this breath, this step, this thought. Ask yourself, how often are you truly present? When you eat, do you taste, or do you scroll? When you speak, do you listen, or do you wait for your turn? When you breathe, do you notice, or do you rush on unaware? Presence is not exotic. It is ordinary life, experienced fully. And here lies the paradox. Presence makes time expand. A minute of true presence feels richer than an hour of distraction. That's why children seem to live forever in a single afternoon, because they are wholly there and fractured, undivided. As adults, fractured by worry and hurry. Days vanish, but presence restores the depth of living. Marcus often wrote that life is short, but he did not mean it despairingly. He meant, life is short if you waste it, if you spend it everywhere but here. But life, lived in presence, is vast, rich, sufficient. To practice presence is to train gratitude into motion. Gratitude notices the gift, presence unwraps it. Gratitude says thank you, presence says yes. I am here, together. They turn existence from survival into living. Consider the small acts that make presence real. Setting down the phone when someone speaks, walking without headphones, listening to the wind, eating slowly enough to taste the sweetness of fruit, breathing deeply, enough to feel the chest rise and fall. Stoicism is not about lofty abstractions. It is about these moments, lived with awareness. And why silence? Because in silence you meet yourself, without distraction, without noise, without excuses. Many fear this, but Marcus embraced it. He met himself on the page, in the quiet of dawn, in the stillness before the stall of empire, and there he found clarity. You can, too. The art of presence is a rebellion against distraction. It says, you will not scatter, you will not own my mind. I will live fully in the one place I can, the now. And with that choice, power flows back into your hands. Because when you live here, no past regret can chain you. No future anxiety can whip you. You are untouchable, not by circumstance, not by time, not by fear. Presence is the crown of Stoic practice, the soul where all other virtues grow: gratitude, courage, resilience. They all depend on being rooted in the present. Without presence, gratitude drifts into memory, courage shrinks into fantasy, resilience dissolves into dread. With presence, they all come alive, now, where they belong. And so, the circle nears completion. Gratitude and presence, two pillars of Stoic life, guide us toward the final arc on the next page. We bring every lesson together: the resilience of Marcus Aurelius, the reflection of Stoicism, and even the strange mirror of AI, to ask, what does it truly mean to live a life of wisdom? And how do we carry it forward? We have walked with Marcus Aurelius across the quiet chambers of his mind. We have seen how stillness, gratitude, presence, and resilience are not distant ideals, but living practices. We've drawn lessons from his meditations and asked, what happens when we hold up the mirror of AI, even ChatGPT, to these ancient truths? Truth is this: philosophy is not about memorizing quotes or admiring wisdom from afar. It is about transformation. It is about taking the whispers of the past and making them commands in the present. Marcus Aurelius did not write for us. He wrote for himself. But in reading him, we find that his reminders belong to all of us. And that is the strange beauty of AI too. ChatGPT doesn't cling to its past. It listens, attends, responds, here and now. If we, like the Stoics, embraced this same clarity, anchoring our energy in the present moment, we could live more freely, more fully, more human. So what have we learned? That chasing meaning outside ourselves only deepens the emptiness. That silence, gratitude, and presence are not luxuries but lifelines. That we must confine ourselves to the present. Not because life is short, but because life is only here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. The lesson is urgent, timeless, uncompromising. Do not wait for tomorrow. Do not wait for permission. Begin now." Think back through this journey. We explored the fire of resilience, the unshakable calm of Marcus in the chaos of empire. We learned the practice of gratitude, the invincible stance of saying thank you, even to hardship. We uncovered the art of presence, the discipline of silence and attention, the fullness of living here and now. And we saw how AI, strange as it sounds, reflects these Stoic truths, anchored in the present, free from regret and dread. The point is not to admire Stoicism. It is to practice it. To walk out of this video and into your life with a little more silence, a little more gratitude, a little more presence. Because if you do, you will find that nothing outside you has power to break you. And here is the final call. Do not just consume Stoic lessons. Live them. When you face frustration, pause and ask, what is in my control? When you are tempted by resentment, ask, where can I place gratitude? When you are torn by distraction, ask, what does presence require of me? These questions, practiced daily, will do more for you than any philosophy book left on the shelf. And so, We arrive here, the end of the page, but not the end of the journey. Because Stoicism, like life, is not completed. It is practiced every day, every choice, every breath. Thank you for walking this path with us. If this message brought you even a moment of clarity, welcome to the channel. We are just getting started. If you felt the weight of Marcus Aurelius' words, if you saw your own life mirrored in these Stoic lessons, don't let the journey end here. Tap subscribe, not just for more videos, but to keep walking with us in this practice. Like this video if the message resonated, and share it with someone who might need a reminder today, because wisdom, like gratitude, multiplies when shared. See you in the next chapter, and until then, stay grounded, stay grateful, stay stoic.